What's up, guys? Welcome to Information Operation. I'm Connor Ryan, and we're coming at you from Marquette, Michigan, bringing you your locally sourced ideas, thoughts, and inquiries. Today on the podcast, we feature Ryan Brandt. Ryan is the lead guitar player of local band Lumi. He has received his master's degree in biology with a neuroscience focus, which is super fascinating. A Marquette local and an avid biker, camper, and hiker. It was really a pleasure having him on. I feel like we covered some ground when it comes to learning, talking about music, how we perceive music. Really cool dude, so I hope you enjoy. What's up, Ryan?
Just enjoying summer Marquette. There's nothing like it. We suffer through the winters to enjoy our long, beautiful summer days. So, you know, getting outside and playing music.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Glad to
Really,
be here.
I appreciate it. And we were talking at the Baby Cakes Muffin Shop about learning and music. I like to just dive right into how did you learn music?
Well, I originally, as a kid, my parents tried to put me into piano lessons. My ADHD was so bad you couldn't keep me on the piano bench. It's something that I regret now, but looking back, it's just something I wasn't able to do early on.
Sure.
The first instrument I would say I technically truly learned was trumpet in sixth and seventh grade. So I guess sixth, seventh, eighth grade I played trumpet. Fell off music until about, took a couple year gap. I was really into extreme sports at the time, so music really wasn't a huge thing.
Right.
But it was really, as a pop punk rock kid, loved bands like Sum 41, Blink-182, Lagwagon, and I was drawn to the instrument. I guess as far as guitar goes, from Tom DeLonge of Blink-182, and picked up the guitar around junior year of high school, so you could say around 2005, 2006. And within a month of playing the instrument, I was immediately drawn to blues. So my youth pastor, Dave Hansen, at Bethel Baptist Church, is who really was trying to get me to play guitar. So I started taking a few lessons from him at the church, and he's the one who got me into Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Petrucci. So I started kind of looking into those advanced guitar players, and
Sure.
then I found Jimi Hendrix. It was like going into transitioning into my freshman year of college. It was Jimi Hendrix, and then I found the Grateful Dead. And within the following years, I went to Rothbury Music Festival and saw all the modern jam bands, which I didn't know exist, along with the
Right.
Dead, and saw my first Lotus show. The first night, it was Keller Williams, Lotus the Disco Biscuits, and it was a life-changing experience. I remember watching Mike Rempel of Lotus play, and it was like, that's what I want to do.
Sure.
And then the following year, in 2010, I saw my first Fish show, and those bands, Umphreys, McGee, Fish, then not only all of their influences, like the bands themselves, but all their influences sprawled my musical interest from jazz to classical to
Definitely.
rock to metal. So
Yeah, it sounds like it. And a lot of people want to say that, good music has died. I think with the jam band evolution, it has definitely taken a turn and it's coming back.
I couldn't agree more. And you kind of have to dig, because it's a lot of it's just not completely in the mainstream, but it really is in your face. You just gotta look out, go to Bonnaroo and just dig for small, like some of those bands, or like those headliners just underneath, like the
Sure.
big pop guys.
Yeah.
And then still, Electric Forest. It's a String Cheese Incident. Go, Fish, obviously, Fish and Dead and Company are still at the top. And I think another unique thing is having John Mayer then as a, you know, the pop guitar like singer and the blues guitarist of our generation. I guess you could really say, like, there's several other honorary mentions there, but just how popular he is, and then to jump back and join the Grateful Dead, be able to
Right.
do this, I think that's really kind of push back into the spotlight.
He
The
didn't need to do that.
No, he didn't.
I mean, he
And
had
it's
enough money and he took a total leap. to do
Yeah,
something like that. I mean, that could have potentially ruined his reputation as an artist.
it's incredible, especially too, like, deadheads, it's a real deep thing. And
Right. You
we
don't
were
want to
all we were
dishonor
all
that.
we were all like really confused at first, and a lot of people, even Bob Weir, the band, didn't think he could do it. And
Right.
yeah, just the fact that he has, like, the last show I saw was absolutely remarkable. And that's the thing about the Grateful Dead music. Kind of their philosophy is, well, they're improvising which musician is taking the music furthest. Kind of that's who when the band is going to lead during that set. And, like, they're
Sure.
notorious for weaving in and out of their music, but just taking it. And that show, John Mayer just took it. It was just remarkable.
Right.
So I guess
Those are big shoes to fill
yeah.
in a big way.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's how you learn music, and your studies kind of led you to find how we learn music, like how human beings
Yeah.
learn music.
Yeah, so I guess yeah, to continue on from that little tangent from how music, I really started to learn music then, once those influences hit me. It was kind of, I joined my first band, Everything Under the Sun,
Hmm.
and that was when I was like, oh, I'm getting better at guitar, but I have these weaknesses. And it was just, I didn't take any theory courses yet, really. And slowly along the way, as had bigger opportunities, started playing a little bit bigger, like, bar gigs, and suddenly it was
Sure.
like, wow, I'm actually getting pretty good at guitar, but I'm lacking these fundamentals of music. So I took Theory 1 and then drumming at Northern. And then it's just kind of been a slow ride through. Ooh, I need to really start studying jazz theory.
Sure.
So started taking lessons from Travis Swanson, the local jazz guitarist, who's just,
Is
that
that what you
guy's.
went to Northern originally for?
No, it was all biology.
Okay, you
It was
started out with
just, it was
biology.
always biology. And then
What drew you to that?
to biology,
Yeah.
I was a kind of a questioning sciencey kid.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess well, we'll jump to that in a second. But just, yeah, as far as music goes, and then it was just that long trail of, I'm getting better. I want to be better now. Leading up to Lumi, it's like I want to be a player that when somebody listens to me, they're I'm melodic. I'm doing
Right.
interesting things.
Right.
I'm speaking the language of my guitar. And
If they're a musician or not,
yeah,
it's enjoyable.
yeah, yeah,
That's
for sure.
awesome.
But it's like I kind of want, those, when you have like someone who's fairly trained and understands music, they enjoy my playing. It's not someone
Right.
who's just completely noodling around. I have intention behind my notes. And
Right. It's almost like a teacher taking a class.
yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely a different dynamic
Mm-hmm.
in any regard. I mean, they know the ins and the outs of how the class is taught or how the music is played, so they're going to hear it totally different. They're going to compartmentalize and piece it apart differently
Yeah,
than just a random student who doesn't understand what's going on.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it comes down to, you always want to be enjoyable, but it's
Sure.
like, that's kind of also the idea of our band Lumi, is that, we try to have something for everyone. We kind of bridge that gap between some kind of poppier stuff that'll grab the attention of people who aren't really into, say, that kind of fusion, jam band kind of
Right.
stuff, something that, like,
Really complex musical
yeah,
layers.
yeah. And then also we have our songs that are, that are pretty progressive. So
Right.
it's kind of fusing that, trying to have something for everyone. And
Right.
um, yeah, I guess, do you want to kind of go in the direction of Lumi, or go back to kind of lead back towards biology
Let's just keep rolling
with the music?
with the music.
Yeah, sounds good.
Like, how do you explain that scientifically? How do you explain music scientifically? We'll do a mix of both, I guess.
Oh, I guess from the way I look at music scientifically is more or less, from I guess there's kind of two sides to it. There's like my interpretation of music while I'm playing it, and then there's like the me going into the neuroscience and thinking about the neural pathways that are
Sure.
involved in that. So you can dive into the circuits that are behind it, which I do occasionally. I haven't studied the auditory pathways
Right.
crazy in depth. I'm aware of them, but you know, I guess at a certain level, it's kind of philosophical for me to think about like improvisation. What do I have to say through my instrument?
Right.
Versus this is the kind of like the science music theory behind it. You kind of at the end of the day, it's let
Right.
your ear be the judge of what you're playing.
Because it is what you make it
Hmm.
at the end of the day.
Yeah,
It
you can
the
complicate it.
the
You
science
can.
exists, but what meaning or what value does it really hold?
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of where like the emotional side of music then comes into play too, which is also I think like the emotional side of music for like in a way is kind of like that bridge between like the neuroscience, like your emotional strings that are being pulled, which
Yeah,
like if you want to look at the limbic system
yeah,
versus just letting that let loose and just appreciating it, kind of like that blend.
right. And I've seen you like at say the Ordoc listening to music, and as an audience member, you are like a sponge. It seems like just like standing there, just
Oh
taking it all
yeah,
in.
yeah. It's when there's an artist who's just super talented, or just in general. I don't mean to mean to be rude to people, but sometimes I'm just like I don't want to be disrupted because
Right,
I'm listening so intent to the rhythm, the drummer, or there's a bass player that's playing something, or my favorite, a guitar player who's just letting it rip. I'm analyzing. It's like
right.
if I'm at a Fish concert, there's no talking to me. Like
Yeah,
I'll I don't want to be rude, but I get upset because I
sure.
just try and just I appreciate it so much and listening intently and studying the music and yeah, my brain does flip flop between that philosophical side of it's making me feel emotionally, or also it's like, whoa, what is he doing there? Like theoretically, oh, that major six harmonized perfectly when he landed there, and
Right.
you know,
Which most people can't even like comprehend those different layers.
yeah, yeah, and I'm getting better and better at recognizing that kind of stuff as you study the theory. All of a sudden, you begin to pick up quickly on exactly what's going on musically.
Right.
Um, that's why I don't listen. I listen to really complex like jazz fusion when I'm studying biology because I can't follow it like Pat Metheny group. It's just
Right. It's over your
yeah, it's
head.
over my head. I can't quite follow it.
That's interesting. What music inspires you?
Uh, I'd honestly say a lot of like pretty much any music out there I can be inspired from. I try not to be negative no matter what, even if it's a band that I think is fairly amateur.
Yeah.
I just always kind of look at it from an aspect of there's got to be something that somebody's doing there that I can't do. I'm not a drummer, so that like I'm
I'd say
automatically
that's true
like
every day
there's
of the week
always
for your whole life and
yeah,
anything.
anything you do you can learn from around you. It's
Yeah.
trying to just be humbled by what you know and what you don't know. So I'm always whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to learn from it. I would say I'm gonna be most inspired by people who are doing something differently. They're playing their instrument differently, or the band just has for instance just great dynamics and
Yeah.
just the
Starting a
yeah, pretty much can
new
be
beginning.
inspired by everything, but I would probably say I'm most inspired by people who just give it. For instance, my friends who like Travis Swanson or Pat Booth, those local jazz
Yeah.
guys, just so inspired by them because they just dedicate their life to it and they're so talented and they're so passionate. I guess the yeah, inspiration comes from passion. People who are the most passionate usually are going to be the most inspiring because they have that much more to offer.
Yeah. And what is your definition of passion?
I would say someone who dedicates and sacrifices as much of their time as possible. And when you make sacrifices, whether it's like relationships or
Sure.
just going out, you're grinding, you're putting as much time as you possibly can with to achieve a greater goal, to always progress, to always be doing something more.
Right. I've always said time and energy.
Yes, yeah.
Because that energy component, if you're putting time in, it doesn't mean that it's effective time
Hmm.
if you're not putting everything you have into it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's in practice that's a great point as well because when you're studying an instrument and guitar for me is easy to do to just be noodling around and not trying something new. It's easy to just get in the habit of
Sure.
you plateau and you're not in
Kind of going through the motions,
yeah, you're
as
not
they'd put it in like sports, just
truly
going through the
focusing.
motions.
Yeah, you're just doing the same. You're. It's never bad to repeat things until you got it down. But then there's that point of well, you've pretty much got that down. You need to move on. You need to try to do something else. And it just
Sure.
takes that much energy and that much more time to be like, okay, I'm
Cool.
gonna sit down and learn like these arpeggios now in this over this chord progression or something, or I'm
Right.
gonna, try going up in fourths and skip these notes and
Right.
sit there. Yeah, it just takes a long time.
As with anything, such as life kind of thing.
Yeah.
It just takes a massive amount of focus.
Oh yeah, and music too is something that basically that's the two things. That's why I study neuroscience and music because it's endless and I will never get bored.
Right.
There's always something more to do. There's always something more to accomplish. It keeps you driving. I don't know
That's
why I'm like that. I just am.
it's truly fascinating how music is never ending, and so is the human mind and what it may be capable of. How do you sit down and learn something, like on a scientific level?
On a scientific level, so I'm the best. Again, kind of my ADHD sometimes, or I don't want to put a label on it, just my inability to have a long
One focus.
focus. And when somebody's talking a lot too, my mind just wanders. So,
Yeah.
gotten a lot better
What are you
training my
thinking about right
mind.
now?
I think I'm pretty focused.
Okay, good.
I think I'm pretty focused. But like, say if I had to go sit down through any type of presentation
Lecture
or
or something
lecture,
like that. Yeah.
um, I'm going to be most engaged by somebody who is engaging, somebody who's putting on a performance, somebody
Sure.
who grabs your attention. Those are the best professors for me. Otherwise, it's kind of I learn my best when I'm told what the goal is. Basically, give me a textbook, give me the resources. I'm myself figured out how to be most resourceful. I mean, you can pretty much learn anything on the internet these days.
Right.
So, just dig a little bit. If I'm looking at for music and theory, there's a million jazz guys out there who have great lessons, or there's websites.
Right.
Science. I mean, and at my level now, it's get down to the nitty gritty and read those primary literature papers, and that's how you really learn. Also, just reading the like multiple introductions and skimming through the primary literature, you're gonna learn
Right.
the most out
That's
of
what I
that.
did all the way through high school.
So, uh, that's one of the biggest things in for science that I try to harp on my students. I try to at the end of the semester give them an extra credit assignment that at those early 200 level classes or so, you don't get that experience really reading primary literature. Where does that information come into those textbooks? It comes from those journals,
Yep.
and it's power. It's really powerful. When people are reading the tabloid, like a general, say MSNBC headline for cancer research, and some new cure for cancer pops up, or you got to read that primary literature. You got to
Right.
and make your own decision for it. You need to be scientifically literate.
There's the
That's
key, is
scientific
make your own
literacy.
decision.
Scientific literacy is key because at the end of the day, you got to look at not only what were their techniques, what were their results, what were their statistics, because you
Right.
can really tweak statistics, and then also who paid for that research,
Yeah.
because biases and
Definitely.
fudging stuff is a real thing. So
I think what you said is key, making your own decision on it, because knowledge is only goes so far. But once you use that knowledge, it becomes wisdom. It becomes experiential knowledge, which is far more powerful than just text out of a book. If you actually go out and use what you've learned, it becomes like ingrained in your like being.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, you learn how to actually learn. That's the real ticket. The sign as a teaching instructor, one of the biggest things that I want my students to come out with when I'm teaching these science courses is scientific literacy.
Yeah.
I want you to be able to navigate through reality, ask the right questions, and be able to find the answers to those questions the best possible. Trying to be as unbiased as you can. Biases are always going to exist,
Sure.
and your ego is often sometimes going to get in the way of that. You just gotta with practice and time, just be as humbled as possible by how much information there is out there.
Right.
And yeah,
And that creates more of an objective opinion than subjective. But through some research I've been doing lately, I've learned that objective and subjective really doesn't exist in this material world because of how over focused we are with I mean, humanly possible, we can't get past our five senses. We can't get past our thoughts. We can't get past where we grew up or where we come from,
Hmm.
the parents we had, it's truly impossible to become completely objective.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Um, and
But I think science tries to do the best that it can.
yeah, that pretty much is the idea behind scientific knowledge is to yeah to be as real as possible. Be as unbiased as possible. As a scientific researcher, there's points I'm gonna have to redo some of my data because I analyzed it myself where they were behavioral studies and you want it to be like a double-blind study kind of where
Sure.
you have no idea what you're looking at and you're just making a decision based on what you're truly seeing. Um, and I think I've done a pretty good job, but no matter what, there's going to be biases. So yeah.
What was your thesis on?
So at Northern Michigan University under Eric Autumn, is the Autumn Research Lab, and we studied neurodegenerative diseases such as ALS or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or diseases like kind of in relation spinal bulbar muscular atrophy, those neuromuscular diseases.
Sure.
So when you're trying to elucidate these highly complex,
Did you do anything with MS?
close.
Close. Okay.
It's also
It's
yeah,
like
it's basically
it's like a
ALS.
type of it.
Yeah, well, MS is um, pretty much the literature states that it or shows that it's a autoimmune disease attacking the myelin sheaths around the nerves,
Okay.
so around your neurons. Therefore, it's going to eventually lead to significant reduction in neural signaling. So
What's ALS stand for?
amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So
Okay.
that's when the actual motor neurons die or atrophy, and then therefore, if there's no motor neurons synapsing on the muscle tissue, the skeletal muscle fibers, those then atrophy and die too. So
Right.
usually the
So
death
in
is
layman's terms, you
from
can't move your body.
yeah, you can't move your body, and you usually end up dying from respiratory failure because diaphragm
So
is
even your autonomic nervous system is shutting down,
um
or is
to an
it,
extent.
or is it mostly
It's
somatic?
well, yeah, there's I would assume that there's things going on there, but I mean primarily ALS is motor neuron skeletal muscle disease.
Okay.
So the thing about that disease is that it's approximately 90% spontaneous, and 10% of it is heritable. So it's a familial inheritance, and
Genetic.
there's yeah, so
Okay.
genetic. Uh, there's a couple crossover proteins that they've identified now that are such as this fuse protein, for instance, that and specifically also SOD1. SOD1's the big one as far as familial genetic inheritance of ALS. Uh, it leads to a copper oxide building up in your neurons, leading to cell death. But really, I guess overall, the whole point is that we really don't know how to treat this disease. There's only a few drugs out there. I think I can't remember which drug it is. It was just passed by the FDA. Finally, another one can prolong life. I think by like 4 months, but significantly, it can't prolong life.
So it's
So
just kind of a band-aid.
yeah, exactly. So uh, that's what we're doing in these research labs. We pick a protein. We look at the molecular cell biology behind it. And in
Hmm.
our case, we study a protein called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a neurotrophin. These proteins are responsible for growth of neurons, development of neurons, and it gets complex depending on the receptors they bind to.
Sure.
But then also cell maintenance during the lifespan of an organism. So they're primarily synthesized in neurons, but then also there's evidence that they're synthesized in skeletal muscle as well. So the way it would work is that they're going to lead to changes in the cell for survival signals. These are the same pathways that would go awry in cancer biology, telling the cell cycle to constantly replicate and grow. In this case, that's not happening. We need
Right.
those signals,
Right.
and we're looking at if that protein signaled from the skeletal muscle back to the motor neuron, and then plays a role in the establishment and for cell maintenance and growth. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what we did is we have this mouse line in which we knock that protein out, we remove it from the genome, so it's only absent from the skeletal muscle. Again, it's so important that if you were to knock it out globally, the nervous system just doesn't develop, period. Pretty much it'll around like it's like around between like the 8 and 12, I think, day mark in mice, in embryonic development. There's just nothing will happen.
Yeah.
But anyways, uh, yeah, we were looking at what happens when you remove that protein. And we've
Right.
definitely identified some things. We definitely have identified that it is important for skeletal muscle motor neuron relationships. However, my research was just investigating the precursor mouse line in which you use this genetic breeding scheme to remove that protein. I won't go into the details of that too far, but basically, I was finding that there were some significant similarities in degenerative behaviors in our precursor mouse as the experimental line. So it's
So in a nutshell.
kind of back to the drawing board,
Right.
going back, and it's just, if you're to take anything away from the research I was doing, it's do really good science, be the best scientist you can, and scrutinize everything along the way, because my advisor had been studying this model for 20 years and it didn't come up. That's the cool thing about Northern, is that having this small research lab, as a grad student, as an undergrad, we're the ones actually
Sure.
taking care of the mice and doing the research all
Sure.
along the way. We're cleaning the cages, and we're performing all the studies all the way through.
So you're really connected to this project.
Yeah, I've been working in that lab since 2011.
So years, like
Yeah,
7
years.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it like to give that TED Talk?
It was an incredible experience. I would say, I learned a lot from it. Trying to be as articulate as you can, and it was a hard TED Talk to give, because
Sure.
I was trying to bridge the.
How do you break something like, even
Yeah.
then, like I'm trying to listen, and how do you break something like that down for an audience?
Yeah, and my whole point, was trying to give a TED Talk that gave a mechanism for neuroplasticity, because neuroplasticity is one of the most fascinating
That's
parts of
super
neuroscience. How the brain
fascinating.
is changing
Yeah.
as you learn. You can truly, to an extent, manipulate your brain for your reality. That's how I
Yeah.
learn music later in life. My brain's closed off to the critical period, but I'm establishing these new networks to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
So my goal was, there's these great TED Talks out there. I mean, there's plenty of lectures, but nobody, as far as in the TEDx community, really had done given a TED Talk that kind of gave some of that molecular biology information as far as the mechanisms that are involved.
Right.
So besides, jumping back to BDNF and these neurotrophins, they are also responsible for instance, synaptic spine outgrowth. These are these small spines that are protruding out of the dendrites of neurons, and that's where, for instance,
That's
in the
where-
pyramidal neurons and the cortices, that's where the synapses are forming.
Yeah, that's where it receives, right?
Mhm.
At the dendrite.
Yep. So those spine outgrowths, at that actual synapse, you'll get, if you're looking at excitatory neurons, so glutamate is the excitatory neurotransmitter, and it's going to bind to AMPA and NMDA receptors. That's what's going to enhance signaling along the neurons from neuron to neuron. However, then BDNF will be then signaled in a retrograde fashion, so from the postsynapse to the presynapse. In the TED Talk, I tried to lighten it up a little
Holy
bit.
shit! Like I'm listening. I'm
Like,
like, I don't know what you're saying, dude. This is a different language.
Yeah, it's a completely different language, and I apologize. But so this is exactly what I did during the TED Talk, was to backtrack, and
Yeah.
really, it's like saying, "Hey man, I just received your neurotransmitters. Hey bro, let's hang out. I'm gonna send my signals back. Let's
Yeah.
establish a stronger connection." And those are the mechanisms that are going to
Does this
alter.
happen
This
automatically?
is happening at all times. This
All
is
times.
always happening. So that signaling and plasticity is just going. So uh, that's the thing, though. It'll take a while to reroute those networks. So that's why music or something, or learning a language is difficult, because you have to, alter these pathways in your brain.
Why is it so easy at a young age?
So that's so as your brain is migrating during development,
Yeah.
you're going to be, there's a combination of factors. There's going to be there's pruning and development. So some of these
When you're a
early fiber
kid,
tracks
they say
are
if you like learn a
yeah,
language before you're
exactly.
7, you learn it 7 times faster or something like that.
Yeah, uh, I guess the way to look at it is that neurons themselves are still in the process of migrating. Those synapses are really beginning to form their, I guess, more hardwired
Mm-hmm.
structures. I will say I'm not, incredibly knowledgeable on that. The best answer I can give is that
More so than me.
it's it's more or less just the fundamental hardwiring is in progress at that point
Yeah.
in time. And then, around the late, I think around developmental ages between like 10 and 12-ish, 11, somewhere in there, is when things start to kind of close off.
Like take root.
But again, that's the whole point of my TED talk is that, we're finding that your brain is always plastic. And going back to those, excitatory synaptic potentiation, in which synaptic plasticity is occurring. So
Right.
these synapses are changing their connections. And those neurotrophins are playing a role in the alterations and growth of those new synapses. You can change
They
your brain.
create new reality. Change your mind, change your
Yeah,
life almost.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the TED Talk, which
Kind of like bring it full
I
circle
was,
here,
yeah,
Ryan.
yeah. So the whole point of that TED Talk then was to give that mechanism for neuroplasticity and then kind of show how I've used that. And that's where it jumps back to science and music. So I will say my body was shutting down. I had gone through in a 1 month period. It
Yeah.
was thesis defense February 22nd. A week later, our band Lumi went to the recording studio and recorded with the guys at Third Coast, so Joe Hedinga. We did a full 50-hour week. Then I basically had a week and a half, and the TED Talk was there. So I burned out, but
Sure.
I did make it through it. But I guess I wasn't as highly articulate as I wanted to at the end. My brain was falling apart.
Right.
Um, but I just wanted to kind of say, yeah, I didn't learn music at a young age, and it was when I started taking, I finally started kind of clicking into advanced music training. So the big one was sight singing, auditory training, where you sing sheet music, start making the auditory connections between intervals of music, and then being able to sing in real time and hear those
Right.
harmonies, melodies, and just knowing those intervals. It was hard, but I made way faster progress than I ever thought I would. And it was kind of that, like, the studying of the neuroplasticity at the time that gave me hope and awareness that, oh my gosh, I can, if I work really hard and just keep driving, maybe my brain will change.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where it's a really difficult task because you don't notice your progress sometimes for 3 months, or it could be even a year
Yeah.
sometimes, of just giving it. And it was, my whole point was at a certain point when you realize you're making that progress, uh, keep driving and keep doing what you're doing and whatever it takes to get to that next step to break through. It's how I was breaking through.
Right. When did
And
you notice when you have those breakthroughs?
you notice you notice when you're playing or improvising and what you were practicing musically as actually
Comes to
comes out, and there's a lot of times I'll be like, oh, I think I'm ready to try to give this a rip. Oh, and you crash and you fail. But it's crashing and fail over and over again until you can get it right. So for instance,
And
me,
embracing that, not getting all discouraged when something like that
yeah,
happens.
it's like, oh, I'm trying to make these arpeggios work in my actual playing, but it's just not coming out quite. And then all of a sudden, that one day, where you link those arpeggios up, and then you're able to tie it back with your blues licks for me or something like that. It's
Sure.
like, wow, that.
Sure.
It's like you're there finally. Uh, but the whole point then at the end of the TED Talk was to bridge that as you work really hard, you start to form these new networks inside your brain, and at a certain point in time you're able to tap into it. It's not an overnight thing where all of a sudden you're able to just jump into a new reality,
Right.
but really I think about it from a kind of philosophical standpoint of you're forming these new networks in your brain that you're able to tap into. I kind of think of it, it's like here's this new network fiber
Right.
tract, and you're able to access that, your frontal cortex, and finally jump into it, and
Right.
it is a new reality. So
How
it's
long
kind
does
of,
that take?
again, it could take, it depends on the individual. Genetic and environmental factors play a role in everyone's different, but again, it's kind of comes down to you recognizing how fast it's going to take you to get there, you know? It's
Right.
like how fast can you learn to speak Spanish, you know?
Right.
It's kind of like
It's up to
that.
you almost.
Yeah, it
Like we were
is.
talking in the beginning, it's like time and energy. How much are you willing? How much passion do you
Yeah,
have?
yeah, and I guess yeah, going back for both science and music, it was things that I started dabbling with, and over time I got better and better. Then saw the potential,
Right.
and then I saw my own potential, and then I just started to eat it
Right.
up, and I
And
never want to
the
stop.
science and the music, they seem really complex, but all the principles you're talking about come back, and they tend to be true for every single thing you
Oh my
do
gosh,
because they all
everything.
come back to the brain
Yeah,
and how the brain operates.
yeah, yeah, for real. And for me, it was just maybe I would never got have gotten to where I am musically without the science. Like I don't know, maybe I would, maybe I
Right.
wouldn't, but uh, from I strongly feel that I got there a lot quicker because of the neuroscience and the understanding of myself because of my understanding of what's going on in
Right.
those little neurons.
And that becomes like everything happens for a reason kind of talk.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you could go down whatever rabbit hole you want with it.
Sure. Sure. And how do you how would you articulate like maybe tips or skills that other professionals could use based on what we've been talking about, like how to learn a task? Like let's say you're at work and you need to learn how to do something proficiently, um, and you only have so long to figure it out. Just daily things that you might be able to do, like fuel your brain. I know hydrate could be one of them. You know what I mean? Just like
Yeah,
simple stuff.
I mean that's a great question. It's a it can be kind of a difficult question because it comes down to uh, understanding your behaviors.
Yeah.
I guess if I'm going to look at it for myself, uh, I have to be prepared to attempt that task. So, again, coming back from my highly active inability to always focus, I have to go into it with a mindful, like a mindset that I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do this.
Like present.
Yeah, and if it's going to be something that's pretty difficult, that I've never done before, you're gonna want to start off with, you got to start with a plan, organize, look at your time frame, be aware of that time frame, and just focus as hard as you can on the steps along the way.
Right.
Sometimes
The task at hand.
sometimes it's gonna be really hard, so you can only put in like 45 minutes to an hour of true focus.
Right.
And then it comes down to, for me, it'd be focus for this long, take a break, walk away, and then come back. For me, I guess thesis writing would have been is a great example.
Yeah.
Scientific writing is really hard. It's the
You
worst
ever
part.
you ever look at something so long that it actually makes you worse if you keep looking at it?
Absolutely.
What is that?
Just at a certain point, your brain can only focus for so long, and it just becomes so daunting. Uh, I had a professor tell me, gave me advice that, unless you have to, don't try to write for more than 4 hours in a day, because after that your brain turns to mush and you're gonna start writing
Yeah,
garbage.
and it becomes a detriment to
Yeah,
your work.
yeah, uh, yeah. Something that takes that much focus, there's usually gonna be a limit to how
Right.
productive it's going to be. So
There's a point in like
I guess that brings me to a good a good example of what to how to frame your productivity. And during my thesis writing, what I would do is I would look at everything that had to be done, because I was also teaching classes. I had things to grade,
sure.
and I would look at, this is what needs to be done in a day, and start off with the thing that's the largest priority, and work on that as long as I can. And as soon as I start to feel that fatigue, switch to another task that it's not so and energy consuming and so draining.
Right.
So grading papers, that's something mindless. And I can just sit there and listen to music.
Right.
And then, it's like, okay, I've got enough done. Now let's switch to something else. Or it's like, I need a break. Let me go
See,
play guitar.
yeah.
I kind of look at it,
See,
also
that's good
you
advice
can
as
you
well.
can you can and then for music, that's how I tie in my time for music when I'm really busy with science, is that I burn out on the science and need a little bit of break. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna play guitar right now for 45 minutes, and then I'm gonna go work out at the gym, then come back and do more writing.
Yeah. Breaking
Kind
it
of
up, but staying productive with all your activity.
yeah.
So
And
a lot of
that's
it seems like it comes down to lifestyle choices.
it does.
Do you know a lot about sleep?
I know a little bit about sleep.
Yeah.
I need to know more. I can't
It's
really
super
offer.
intriguing to me how sleep basically acts as a reset button for
It's really
your
remarkable, and
focus.
you got to make sure you're entering, proper stages of sleep. Make sure that you enter REM sleep. A lot of substances you got to be careful of, from any kind of, like, stimulants to, like cannabis or alcohol, which are
Yeah,
depressants.
even things
Won't
like
if you
Advil and whatever.
Yeah, you got to look at, for instance, like drinking. It's like, okay, well, I have a bunch of stuff to do tomorrow, and just that extra drink, alcohol won't allow you to, I think, enter those stages of REM sleep, and therefore you're gonna feel really tired the next day. If you notice
Right.
that,
Even if you sleep for 10 hours.
yeah, exactly, you'll notice you will start dreaming way late in the night, like right before you wake up. That's because your brain never entered those stages of sleep. So that's something to always keep in mind too.
Right.
Yeah, it's those lifestyle choices.
Exactly. Can you shed light on like what a dream is?
On only what I think a dream is.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a lot of
There's
times.
no wrong answers here.
Yeah, I mean that's up for debate. Scientifically, I'm just gonna say
Okay.
I'm not. This isn't gonna be scientific. This is my
Sure.
own
Sure.
personal kind of opinion. I think it's a lot of subconscious thoughts that are going on, and I'm kind of a high-strung person with a lot of things going on. So I mean, personally, I notice in my dreams all sorts of tasks that are
Yeah.
needed to be done. Like shows that are going to be played, or a big event that's coming up, or certain people. I mean, it's kind of comes back to, I'm sure everyone's had those dreams where after finals, all of a sudden you have that dream 2 days later where it's a night terror because you missed your exam and you were late. I think a lot of stress-related anxiety is going to turn back up in that subconscious, and it ends up in your dreams.
Right. And is the subconscious always active at all times, or is it
Well, all of
turn
your,
on at times?
I guess the only way I could answer that is, again, I'm not really big in cognitive neuroscience.
Hmm.
It's like there's always more things to learn. Uh, I guess I would just answer that coming back from the question of, like, you only use like 10% of your brain.
Is
That's
that true?
complete horseshit.
It's horseshit.
uh,
Okay.
everything's always going. Everything is always working. Uh,
To the best of its ability.
yeah, I mean, sometimes there's gonna be circuits that aren't always firing the best to your frontal cortex, so your central processing might not be as on point, I guess. But obviously your pons medulla and brainstem are working all the time. Otherwise, if they weren't, then
Your heart would stop.
your
You'd
heart,
stop breathing.
I mean, the cells would keep going, but there'd be no innervation from the sympathetic or
Yeah.
parasympathetic.
You'd
Yeah,
stop
so
digesting food.
you gotta realize that it's not like your retinal cells just stop working. Everything's working.
Right.
It's just kind of like your awareness. If you might be kind of sleepy or foggy, and you're just not as your cognition might be inhibited.
But that's a specific portion of the brain.
Yeah,
It's not like
and I'm
you're.
just saying it's all going. All those neurons are firing.
Yeah.
And if they're not, they're dead.
Right. Is the subconscious a different portion of your brain?
I don't think there's.
Or is it all one thing?
I mean, that gets into. I don't know how to quite answer that question.
Because there's like cognition, and then there's like
I mean, that's just
instinct.
awareness. That just comes down to awareness. I think subconscious is this, like, your level of cognition that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Again, it's kind of out of my field, but
What
that's how I would
is-
answer that.
what
Like,
is-
for instance, like your limbic system, your emotions, your emotional
Yeah.
profile.
That affects how you answer or make
And
decisions.
yeah, and an interesting thing about that is that that's part of your diencephalon, right underneath your cortex, or they're kind of both related. But I mean, like the hippocampus, which is basically the last kind of structure feature of the telencephalon. So telencephalon is your cortex, what makes us human, and it's just the horseshoe like or structure underneath that the cortex sits upon.
Yeah.
That's your memory center. Everything is firing there, where your memories are kind of being made and whatnot.
Sure.
And then at the tip of the hippocampus, you have the amygdala, which is your fear response center, and then also then relayed up into like the area of the brain called the basal ganglia. We have our areas of the brain that are controlling inhibition and movement, and they're strongly correlated with the nucleus accumbens, which is the pleasure center.
Huh.
There's up for debate, which areas are part of what's called the limbic system. But that's the emotional circuits within the brain. The interesting thing is that that whole limbic system has to then go through what's known as the relay center of the brain called the thalamus. And that is what then connects to the forebrain and the cortex. So there's like this, it's kind of like a cortical disconnect. You have your cortices, which are our pyramidal neurons sitting up in our forebrain, and for our conscious reasoning, that has to communicate with all those other levels of the underlying brain.
So in order to make like
So-
a real action decision, you have to go through your emotion
so
center.
there's-
You have to go through.
So I mean, that's kind of
Give your mic a turn
kind of
or
like
something.
what?
Give your mic just a turn.
Yeah,
A rotate.
yeah.
There you go.
It's kind of sometimes, it's thought that maybe we're disconnected from our emotions sometimes because it's not a direct pathway. There's these complex circuits that are underneath the forebrain that then are signaling to it. So
Sure.
it gets complex, and I don't know my direct pathways for everything. I've studied a handful of them, but then beyond that, then there's all the motor cortex, and everything
Yeah.
is filtering through that thalamus. So everything coming up in the peripheries, and then descending down for motor signaling. That all has to go through that thalamus. So
Yeah.
it's
And I
this
know-
giant relay center.
I know there's reflexes that don't involve the brain. What about like intuition when you need to make a split-second decision? Where's that come from?
That well, for instance, what's going to happen? Say you have to like make a life-threatening decision. Say
Right.
that suddenly there's a venomous snake that's right at your feet, and you have to move fast to get out of that way
Right.
of that animal. So those are evolutionary circuits. So going back to that's a combination of you're gonna see that animal, you're gonna hear it, so that sensory information is gonna feed in through your eyes, down your optic nerve, to your occipital lobe, or you hear a rattlesnake, so that central processing is gonna shoot in through your auditory cortex. Anyways, it's gonna hit that amygdala. It's gonna hit that fear response center where we've seen that snake before, and we know that we need to get out of here. It's dangerous.
Sure.
So it's that then these pathways are going to elicit a strong fear response. It's going to activate that amygdala, and then that in itself is then going to activate a movement response,
Right.
which is
Immediately.
usually
That's like yeah.
get out of there. There it could be if it's like a pain response. So say you step on something sharp,
Sure.
then we have those relay systems like the knee jerk reflex
Right.
system.
Already like programmed.
Yeah,
It doesn't have
so-
to go all the way up to the brain.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, so you're gonna feel that pain ascends, but you're also gonna get those reflex, proprioceptive. You have these. Yeah. Yeah.
Starting to talk about that kind of intrigues me. Like, what do you think cognition would be like without the five senses?
It would just be a whole different reality.
You ever heard of the song like "One" by Metallica?
I think I know the song, but I've never listened to the lyrics really.
So like this guy, he's in World War One. He gets his legs blown off, his arms blown off. He can't see, he can't hear, he can't talk, he can't feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's singing from the perspective of the person who that happened to. And they no longer have five senses. They're just like a brain.
Yeah, just
Within
lost
a body.
in the void with a lot of input. I mean, there's gonna be a difference between someone who loses their senses versus someone who is born without them.
Is that possible?
Absolutely.
People have been born without senses?
Well, yeah. Let's say you're just born blind or born deaf.
Sure, but all five.
All five, probably not. You
Okay.
probably didn't develop.
Right,
Right.
right.
So it's gonna be hard to say. Say he's blind. Say he's deaf, and he's lost his limbs. It's gonna be I could go on into some weird things he's gonna be experiencing.
Yeah.
But
Seems like an interesting
his brain's gonna
consciousness.
rewire to whatever type of stimulus is left over. So
Yeah.
though that in the sensory and motor cortex, the areas that are still there that are still perceiving are gonna expand and grow. He's probably gonna experience weird things like phantom limb syndrome, which is when you lose a limb, the neighboring areas of your cortex. So say
It feels like it's there.
So it feels like it's there because this brilliant neuroscientist named Ramachandran discovered this. He had a patient who had, I think, lost an arm, and he was experiencing this insatiable itch in his face, and he this or in his limb, and the neuroscientist scratched his face in a specific location and realized, and the itch was gone. His facial
Whoa.
recognition center had facial sensory center of his sensory cortex had grown into his location where his arm sensory input used to be. Therefore, that was itchy, telling his brain that his arm was itchy.
So the brain is super adaptable.
Yeah,
It
exactly. That
basically
gets back into that
adapts to.
plasticity. It's always changing, and it's literally if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
it kind of just intrigues me. Like, what would phantom sight be like? Wait, what would the things that you're seeing be like if you really had never seen before? You know, it's
yeah, it gets wild. And my favorite thing is I always kind of think about people who are born blind, for instance, and are musicians have
yeah,
almost an advantage
like
because like
Stevie
their
Wonder
auditory
and
cortex is so fine tuned.
Ray Charles, Stevie
Yeah,
Wonder.
exactly. Like these guys almost in a way have an advantage because their reality is sound. It's like it's sonic. Like they
Right,
are. I can only imagine what the world would be like to them. How fine tuned. Like at a certain point, I think there's even
like
you can
Daredevil.
almost echolocate to an extent.
That's unreal.
Uh, and I mean, it's not going to be as good as a bat with their sonar, but it is. That's kind of like the idea of tapping their sticks. Like, they're
Yeah,
hearing that sound and they're able to get based on the reverberation and the echoing, they're able to get a
like a
kind of
lay
a
of the
picture.
land.
Yeah, yeah.
That's super interesting
And
to
that's
me.
also why I close my eyes and play. A lot of artists, you want to get rid of that visual stimulus so you can just focus on the auditory stimulus and also get rid of the crowd. Just you're in your own little world
Yeah,
while you're playing, kind of thing.
yeah. And you guys perform pretty often.
hmm
How often and where?
Uh, we go through phases. You know, one big thing is we don't want to oversaturate Marquette as far as Lumi.
Sure.
But we try to at least do a gig a month. During the summer months here, we've been booking our festival schedule. Pretty much after this summer, I will have accomplished playing every one of the big shows in Marquette, I guess aside from Blues Fest, but we're not a blues
Harborfest? You guys
band.
gonna be at Harborfest?
We won't be at Harbor Fest this year. We did that last year.
Yeah.
But, from Harbor Fest to Food Fest, Lake and Inlands, Free the Music Festival, we're going to be at the county fair this year.
Sweet.
So, next year starting, we're trying to branch out.
Yeah.
We'll be trying to hit every bigger festival that we can get our hands on.
More Midwestern.
Yeah.
Very cool. And if you had to describe Lumi to somebody who's like never heard of
Yeah.
that at all, what would you
Yeah.
say? Like
Yeah.
you said there was like more of a mission that I wasn't even aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching back over to our band Lumi, our project. So I've been very fortunate. I guess I'll start off just by giving a background of the band and the history behind it. So
Yeah.
Tom Tarkelson, one of my absolute best friends. I've been playing music with him since the early days with Everything Under the Sun. Ross Larson was also in there, who's also the other lead guitarist and does some backup vocals for Lumi. But we had Tom and I had been playing with Not Quite Canada for several years,
I
and
remember that. Coco's.
our best friends Dan Labar, who's the bass player, Ross Larson, came across this incredible drummer Wyatt Smith, and then another local Harvey boy, Ethan Syria,
Yeah.
our lead vocalist. They formed that band, and it was like we gotta join our best friends in that band. It's just they're going in the musical direction that we want. They're incredibly hard workers, and they have the drive and the same kind of philosophy we do. So um, then jumping into the whole point of Lumi is to, you know, musically, it's to have something for everybody. We enjoy the music. We love it. We feed off of it. And just playing together is incredible. But as far as like the whole outlook as a band, as a philosophy, kind of a mission statement to produce music that creates, an environment where the people listening to us, our audience, is engaged to the point that they're just living in the present moment, in a positive present moment, because our daily lives are so hectic, so stressful that it can be toxic to our mental health.
Right.
And so we really want to produce music that takes you away, gets you so engaged. You're grooving, you're having a good time, and it's a positive feedback system when we're playing and we're having a great time, and we see our audience grooving
Yeah.
and their smiles and
Yeah.
people freaking out when all of a sudden I do my thing and I'm soloing.
Yeah.
It's a system of uh, that energy then projects back on us. It's just reciprocating back and forth. So it's just
Powerful.
it's an incredible thing. There's nothing like it. You can't describe it besides it's a really unbelievable sensation.
Yeah. It's something you kind of got to see for yourself.
Yeah. You just gotta come out and check out Lumi. It's we get that inspiration from a lot of the other like jam bands or jazz
Sure.
musicians. But obviously the big ones. The Grateful Dead, Fish, Humphreys, McGee,
Yeah.
String Cheese Incident,
Yeah.
and Papadozio. String Cheese and Papadozio, as far as the
Modern.
environment,
Yeah.
yeah. Because their music is real, and I've had the pleasure of meeting the guys and opening for Papadozio in the past.
What? I
Um,
had no idea.
and they're just such wonderful people.
Yeah.
They gave me ring rundowns of their equipment. They were giving us hugs. They were just such wonderful people. It was
I think
it-
you guys have a real common understanding in what you just said. Just that positive
yeah,
feedback loop. You're trying to make a positive
and
difference.
and that's how everyone in the band is. You'll see Dan just dancing around on stage. He's a full-time businessman, financial
Yeah.
advisor.
Is he the
Actually,
bass
he's
player?
the what?
Is he the bass player?
He's the bass player.
No way. I
Yeah,
did not know
yeah.
he did finance.
He is taking over North Star Investment Firm is his dad.
Wow.
And so he does his thing, and he just loves music so much, and that's kind of his philosophy, because there's a lot of times he's stuck at works, and his mental health starts to suffer from being so busy. Same thing with me in science or
Sure.
anybody in the band. And
Anybody
so
in general.
we experience that in our own daily lives. So that's music. Our playing music is the outlook, and we want our audience to feel the same way. It's our
And like feed off
outlet.
of
That's
that.
what I meant. It's our outlet, and we want our audience to be as engaged as we are.
Right. And
So
everybody has their outlet, but not everybody employs it.
yeah,
Not everybody puts that outlet into practice. I found that through yoga. When I was doing a lot of yoga, I felt like I finally had something where I was completely captured by the moment, and I was not distracted by the outside world or what I had to go do or like go cook or go grocery shopping. It all just went away for that moment. But I don't see enough people employing that outlet in their life. I feel like that's truly missing out on something.
it really is. It's awareness. It's mindfulness. I'm working on that. I'm working on being more mindful and getting into more meditation. Uh, it's incredibly beneficial for me. It's incredibly beneficial for anybody, and it can make you so much more productive and aware of your mental state.
Right.
Uh,
Kind of getting tuned into the ultimate reality
yeah,
rather than just this perspective that you have and is almost mindless.
yeah, absolutely.
It's
It's
a
so easy
mindless
to be
perspective.
mindless in today's age, and some people are so subject to it with our phones. It's like I find myself just clicking on my email or my Facebook app just
Right.
automatically, and suddenly I'm just like, what am I doing? It's
Yeah.
like put this thing away.
It
And
really has come with the phone in a
yes,
big way.
yeah,
And
man,
only because you can carry it wherever you go.
yeah.
I don't think it's ever been this way for
Mm-mm.
kids growing up
It
either.
really the smartphone has, I mean, in my opinion, pushed technology to a point of easily being toxic, because now we have high quality games on our phone. We have the internet. We have social media. We have so much that can be distracting. I mean, that it's also a powerhouse, and you can have entire encyclopedia. You can read primary literature on here. You can
Yeah.
study music theory. I've deleted all my apps and uploaded only music theory apps
Yeah.
on here. So like, you can be so productive. You can use it as a tool,
Yeah.
or it could just ruin you.
Exactly. They say, I love the metaphor, your iPhone or certain substances can be like a hammer. They're a tool. You can build a house, you can smash yourself in the face with it. And with iPhone or the smartphone, you truly can build an empire
Mm-hmm.
with a smartphone.
You
If
can.
you're building a business and you want to reach people in a positive way or a negative way, I suppose,
Yeah.
you can build an empire with your smartphone.
That's also a good, that's a great point because it's like there's times I delete my Facebook and then I'm like, oh, I have to have it because we have to promote the show and
Mm-hmm.
just,
That networking.
yeah, and it's a great tool. It's a great tool, and it can also be a demon.
Right.
It's your awareness. Back to that
Exactly.
mindfulness of what are you
Exactly.
doing with your time.
Exactly. And it is what you make it. Just like your reality, your smartphone, your technology usage, where you put your time, where you put your energy is what you make it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, yeah, just coming back to that passion thing, you know, uh, that mindfulness and awareness for us is we put our mindful awareness and our passion into playing music and trying to produce more music and get to that next level. You know, we're aware that being musicians is a ridiculous professional career.
It's professional,
It's so hard to make it as a musician, especially in like a six-person band.
right?
Uh, so, you know, our idea is, you know, we have something really cool going on. We got something really special. And I think that we gotta try. You gotta throw
You
yourself
got it.
there. You gotta grind, and you just gotta see where it goes. I'm, you know, why would I ever give it up? You know,
Right.
you just gotta throw it out there and give it your all.
Yeah. And you're
And
taking a risk.
we're taking a
I
risk.
mean, you're
Yeah.
taking a chance. You've put a lot of time into the science and a lot of energy into becoming, a master student, and now you're starting or you're in a band and you're gonna start touring.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a risk,
Yeah.
but you're putting it all out there.
Yeah, you know, the big thing is I can't take, if I really want to pursue where I want to go as a scientist, because I really have the goal. My two goals in life are to play Red Rocks Amphitheater and get that PhD in neuroscience so I can be the researcher that I want to be.
Yeah.
Uh, kind of like look at it as my role model is Brian May of Queen. He quit his PhD in astrophysics a couple years in to pursue Queen. And then it's like 36, 37 years later in 2007, he went back and he finished that dissertation in astrophysics. Stayed present enough in the field along the
Wow.
way, and he's a brilliant guitar player and he's a brilliant scientist. When you listen to him talk, he's just so calm and articulate. He's just, if I could meet anybody in the world, probably it would be him at the moment. He's just so inspirational.
But you're Ryan Brandt.
Yeah.
You're gonna do your own thing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That's awesome, man.
But yeah, I guess back on the music track, we just finished recording our album.
Okay.
It was an incredible experience. We got to work with the Bill Chrysler Studio Third Coast Recording Company. Bill Chrysler is this nationally known recording engineer and monitor engineer. He is currently Maroon 5's monitor
Wow.
engineer. He was
So professional studio.
He was John Mayer's engineer for the last 12 years, and then everyone from Christina Aguilera to Paul McCartney. And then our producer Joe Hedinga, he's a wizard,
Yeah.
amazing human being. He uh, he himself is an incredible keys and synth player. Close with the Humphreys McGee guys. He plays with those guys in side groups. So again, going back into that microscope,
Yeah.
recording with those guys, it's like, yeah, we want to do our best, but
Yeah.
we did it, and having him as our producer is just incredible.
When does it come
And
out? Where can
we
people find
we
it?
got the masters back yesterday, and we
Wow.
haven't listened to it yet. You know,
Yeah.
I look at it as these recordings are Lumi's thesis. We've spent the band wrote the material over the last 2 years. You know, I was involved in
And
at
put it
least half of
together.
it,
Yeah.
and so we got this first project done, first recordings, and it'll be available on Spotify. We'll have hard copy CDs, and we'll see if we can get it in iTunes. We're gonna push it as far as we can.
Beautiful.
So yeah, tonight we're gonna have our first listening sessions of
Yeah.
our first album, The Elephant Never Forgets,
I love it.
and also just for an additional bit of information, we record enough material for a late release 3-song EP, and that also will be including a music video to the song Home that we'll be shooting next weekend.
Where are you shooting it?
We're shooting at Paradise Cove in Munising or in Christmas.
Sure.
So we're gonna get drones. We're gonna bring out a stage, I believe, and we're gonna shoot the songs about growing up and living in the UP and how it's a northern paradise. We're so fortunate to be here. Pretty much everyone in the band is from the UP, or at least Michigan. Wyatt grew up in, I believe, North Carolina in conjunction
Yeah.
with the UP. But
Yeah.
we've all been living here for a very long time. It's our home, and that's
Sure.
what the song's about. It's kind of a cliche, kind of poppy song, but it's got. If you grew up here, it's got some great jingle
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
It's a cool song. It's a cool tune. I'm most excited for the song on that EP coming out. It's called Sublimation, which I wrote the music for it and most of the lyrics, and it's about our close friend Evan Clendinging Eagle, who passed away a few years ago. And the man was Superman. He was one of those people who never small talked. He
It's always meaningful.
always meaningful. Anybody who met him for just an hour, even, like, we're just captivated by this individual. He beat leukemia. He would take chemo meds on like the weekends and then teach CrossFit all week long. Dude was incredible. And like when he decided to learn bass, and his philosophy was, I need to wake up an hour earlier. I'm gonna play bass for 2 hours until I learn the instrument. He was so dedicated, and his lifestyle and his passion for getting to the next point, whatever you do, rubbed off on all of us. And so that song is so meaningful, and I have some really extended guitar solos and guitar leads, and it's hard to, harness like that
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 energy.
energy in a non-live setting. And I'm pretty happy the way it's turning out. So
That's beautiful. Well, Ryan, we just did an hour, man.
yeah.
That's awesome. Do you want to give a shout out to anybody or anything going on in the next few weeks? People can
Uh,
come see.
let's see. I mean, as far as seeing our band Lumi, we will be playing our next show Friday night, August 10th at Free the Music Festival,
Lake and Land.
Lake and Land. We're super excited to be back there.
Sure.
It's a great time. If you've never been to Lake and Land, it's a special place. And then we'll also be at the Marquette County Fair the next night, August 11th, from 7 until 10 p.m.
Beautiful.
Otherwise, if have any interest in taking science classes, I'll be teaching multiple labs in anatomy, physiology, cell and molecular, intro biology. So if you want to come and nerd out with me any day of the week,
Yeah.
my office is 3108,
Right
I
on.
think. I can't remember.
Yeah. But dude, I really appreciate you being here, and it sounds like there's a lot more to come.
Oh yeah. We're gonna keep pushing. Science is never done. I gotta publish that thesis now. I guess last thing I was able to do was I'm getting published in a concussion study. I was able to get a biochemistry essay to quantify BDNF, the protein I study in concussion patients, to see if it's neuroprotective. So
Beautiful.
yeah, I actually had to leave Hiawatha the other day because I procrastinated on writing my part of that, materials and methods, but went home, ripped it, and yeah. Happy Hiawatha, everybody.
Rock and roll, guys. Until next time, ride the waves, dude.